More than 2 miles beneath the surface of the North Atlantic, something enormous rests in total darkness. It has been there for over 100 years. Silent, slowly dissolving into the same deep it was never supposed to touch. 2,224 people boarded that ship. Most of them never came home. This is the story of the Titanic, April 1912. The world was drunk on its own ambition, and nowhere was that ambition more visible than in the shape of the RMS Titanic, 882 feet of steel and iron and oak, so large that standing beside her hull felt less like standing next to a ship and more like standing at the base of a cliff. Inside, she was a floating palace. First-class passengers dined in gilded restaurants modeled after the finest hotels in Paris. A grand staircase descended beneath a soaring glass dome, gleaming like something that had no business existing on the open ocean. In the lower decks, hundreds of immigrants packed into third class with everything they owned, heading for new lives in America. To them, the Titanic wasn't luxury. She was a doorway. On April 10th, she left Southampton for the very first time. Thousands watched from the docks, staring up at that vast black hull sliding past them, slowly, impossibly, and felt something they hadn't expected: awe. The unsinkable ship was finally at sea. By the fourth night, the mood aboard was electric. The ocean was calm and glassy. The sky was full of stars. Captain Edward Smith, 62 years old, 4 decades at sea, preparing for his final voyage before retirement, had every reason to feel confident. But the sea was already setting something in motion. At least 6 ice warnings had reached the ship that day. Massive fields of pack ice drifting south from Greenland, free-floating bergs moving silently through the darkness ahead. The officers were aware. The ship pressed forward anyway, 22 knots through a moonless, lightless night. In the crow's nest, 2 lookouts scanned the horizon with their bare eyes. Their binoculars had gone missing before departure and were never replaced. At 11:39 p.m., one of them saw something shift in the darkness ahead. Dark against dark, enormous, and getting closer. He rang the warning bell. He called the bridge. The wheel was thrown hard over, the engines ordered to stop. The Titanic began to turn. Not fast enough. The collision was almost quiet. A low, grinding scrape along the hull, 10 seconds, and then silence again. Passengers in first class barely looked up. Some thought the anchor had dropped. Below the waterline, 5 compartments were flooding. The ship's designer was woken and brought below to assess the damage. He waded through the rising water alone, studying the hull, doing the arithmetic that no one wanted him to finish. When he returned to the bridge, his face already said everything. She had less than 2 hours. What followed was not clean. There was no single moment of clarity, only a slow, terrible unraveling as the reality of what was happening spread through the ship like cold water through an open hull. Officers moved calmly through the corridors. The band began to play. The lights were still on, and still passengers stood at the rails, unwilling to climb into the lifeboats. Small wooden things dangling over black freezing ocean, choosing instead to wait on something that still felt solid beneath their feet. The ship carried lifeboat capacity for barely half the people on board, and even those boats left half empty. In the lower decks, the corridors were flooding fast. Families pressed against locked gates, shouting in languages no one above them understood. By 1 a.m., the forward deck was underwater. Those who remained pressed toward the rising stern, over 1,500 people, as the ship tilted higher and higher against the stars. Strangers held strangers in the dark. The lights flickered once and went out. At 2:20 in the morning, the stern rose vertical, and the Titanic was gone. She left behind 1,500 people in water so cold that survival was measured in minutes. Their cries carried across the flat ocean in every direction. The survivors in the lifeboats said that sound never left them, not for the rest of their lives. And then, one by one, it stopped. The ocean went still. 2 miles down, the light doesn't exist. The Titanic has rested in that darkness for over a century, the bow buried deep in the ocean floor, the stern torn free in the final plunge, lying nearly a quarter-mile away, barely recognizable. Between them, a debris field miles wide, and within it, the ocean kept what it chose to keep. Hundreds of shoes lie on the sea floor, many of them in pairs, side by side. The leather preserved by the cold and the dark, long after everything that filled them was gone. A child's boot, a porcelain doll's face staring upward, personal luggage split open across the silt, the grand staircase, consumed by the sea decades ago, gone entirely, leaving only bare steel where something once gleamed. Rust formations drape every surface of the wreck like frozen waterfalls. The hull is collapsing, slowly, season by season. Scientists say that within our lifetimes, the Titanic will be unrecognizable. The ocean floor will take back every last fragment, until nothing remains but a shadow in the clay where something enormous once fell. But right now, she is still there. Still the same ship that left Southampton on a spring afternoon while the crowd waved from the docks and did not know they were saying goodbye. The sea took the ship, and the ship kept the rest. Silence, 2 miles down. At that depth, the pressure is 300 times what it is at the surface. The temperature hovers just above freezing. Nothing moves, nothing sounds. It is one of the most complete silences on Earth. And the Titanic has rested inside it for over 100 years. The bow is buried deep into the ocean floor, its mast still pointing upward into the darkness above. The stern lies nearly a quarter-mile away, shredded, collapsed inward, barely recognizable as something that was ever built by human hands. Between them, a debris field stretching miles wide across the silt. And within that field, the ocean kept what it chose to keep. Long rust formations drape every surface of the wreck, like frozen waterfalls. The hull is collapsing, slowly bleeding into the darkness around it. By piece. Scientists say that within our lifetimes, she will be unrecognizable, until nothing remains but a shadow in the deep where something. Same ship that 2,000 people called home for 4 days in April 1912. She didn't sink into history, she sank into darkness, and the darkness never let go.